Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. WeatherBrains 464 for December 15th, 2014. This is the pre-show. Pre-show is going to be short tonight because, goodness.
Everybody's here.
Everybody's here, and I'm late turning on the broadcast button. I mean, well, you know, it's funny. I look down here, and people are watching us before I actually activate the broadcast. And I think the way it works, if you're coming in via YouTube or Google Hangouts, you can watch it even when we're not theoretically broadcasting. And then for everybody else, all the embedded players, that's when you see it, is when we broadcast live. But anyway, yeah, let's see here. Ooh, there's our two guests. Gentlemen, can y'all hear us?
Loud and clear. Again.
All right. This is where are you guys? Somebody's kitchen there? What is this?
That's the first and last time a weather service office has ever been referred to as, quote, somebody's kitchen, end quote.
Well, it's a nice kitchen. You've got the big plant back there, and look.
It kind of looks like a powder room of a fancy hotel, you know, like the chairs and the mirror in the background.
Yeah, this does not look like a National Weather Service forecast office. And
it looks like a Delta Crown room.
Wow. I guess it's their green room. You know, before they work a shift, they get to go in the green room for 30 minutes, and they have the masseuse.
For you guys.
Yeah, the masseuse comes in, and they bring in the green-only M&Ms.
And the makeup.
And the makeup. So we're missing Dr. John. Is he watching the Packers again?
He says he hasn't gotten an invitation.
What?
He just sent an email.
Song. Oh, yeah. See, every time I say Dr. John, I got to play my song. Dr. John! Dr. John! Well, let's just try and invite him again.
He says, no invite yet. Are we still on?
Oh, you know what? He's got... you know, John has like 2 profiles in Google Plus, which is weird. I've noticed that. Same picture, same everything. Hit it! You got to hit the post. All right. I have to stop that before the RIAA takes us down. You know, they won't post this show on Google if you put in too much you know, music or copyrighted stuff. You'll get flagged and banned or whatever.
Does that mean we come on here on Monday nights if we get banned?
Yeah, that's right.
We actually had a nice little...
I wouldn't know what to do with a Monday night. Jeez.
What'd you say, Aubrey?
I said we had a nice little legal workshop today about copyrights and, you know, legalities of reporting and internet and all sorts of fun stuff. What you can do.
I would love to go through one of those because I don't know what you can use and not. I have no idea.
The funny thing is, James, the lawyers don't know either. I mean, we did one of those, and we've got one of the best copyright lawyers in the state, if not the country, and you know, a lot of it is, here's some examples, and here's what I mean, it's law stuff. I mean, here's what the law says, and then here's what the courts are generally letting people get away with. But you know, in terms of, well, what if we did this? Well, this sort of fits under this category, and sort of fits under this category, but really, I can't tell you until you do it and get sued.
Kind of like this thing, Nate. Look.
Great.
I know what that is.
Long live the quadcopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of which, did you see where my employer used one of those on television?
Yes. I'm impressed.
Dun dun dun.
What?
Billable hours shall ensue.
Yes. Well, they already have. We have corporate counsel for that, so. And it's funny, there was an article on, I think, TV News Check or something recently about, or TV Technology or something, and I didn't realize just how much behind-the-scenes stuff our management had gone through, you know, in terms of making sure, for example, the guy that was going to fly it had to have the same number of hours behind the remote controls of this thing in a remote area that a private pilot would have to have behind, you know, the stick of a Cessna or a Piper or something. I mean, they went through a lot of sort of, you know, short of getting him a private license, they did a lot of stuff, I think, well, to try and fight off a future, you know, the impending inquiry from our the aviation authority. So we'll see. But our case is these things are useful and they should be useful and we should be allowed to use them, and we're willing to have the conversation. Hey.
Hey, let's eavesdrop on Brian. He's going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, this is, last time he picked it up in the middle of the show, we could hear him talking to some woman. I mean,
We could hear her voice too.
So do we need to invite Shelby in here?
Yes, James.
Sorry.
Nice of you to invite me also.
Well, Dr. John, you've got 2 profiles on Google+. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I invited.
There's a fake profile.
It's like, and your pictures are like very similar. And it's,
Wow. Split personality.
Yeah, the right one, I've got you in a circle called WeatherBrains, panel members, the regulars, and I just clicked on the wrong one, so you got an imposter out there.
Okay.
Let's get this sucker started. We're on cable television. Welcome everybody watching us on the cable. So let me see here. I got to get my act together. Let's do record channel 1, which is me, and record channel 2, which is the rest of the world. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Jingle bells. Come on now. Yes, it is, ladies and gentlemen. 'Tis the season to be merry. 'Tis the season. It's a great time of the year. This is WeatherBrains episode 464 for December 15th, 2014. And we are glad you're with us. We're 10 days away from Christmas, which is hard to believe. But my name is James Spann, and we are got a big group on here. This is going to be a good show tonight. I just feel it. Some nights I feel it. Brian Peters, do you feel a good show coming up?
I feel a great show coming up, and I've got my Rose Bowl tickets.
Oh boy! There you go.
Waiting on my Sugar Bowl tickets to get here.
Hey, hold those back up. Hold those back up on that camera one more time. And for those listening, Brian is holding up his Rose Bowl playoff semifinal tickets. The Florida State Seminoles versus the Oregon Ducks. You have 2 tickets. Where are those seats, Brian?
Yeah, that's what I was
We
wondering.
lost James.
What?
No, you're here.
I think Brian's got
We lost
bandwidth
everybody?
problems here. But Brian is using his 9600 baud modem.
Yeah, I guess.
Wow. No, so where are those seats, Brian?
They're in the south end zone.
What?
About
a man
about
of your
halfway up.
importance sitting in the end zone?
Really?
I can't afford anything else.
Oh boy, you need a new agent. So Brian, who do you like in that game? You like this Florida State or Oregon?
Let me guess.
Of course, Florida State.
Oh
no!
You got to admit, Oregon's got cooler uniforms, though. Man, I wonder what they're going to wear for this game.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Ask Nike.
It's going to be interesting. Two Heisman Trophy winners on opposite sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. John, I was singing your praises last Monday night. You were not on the show, and instead of giving some excuse like, I was reviewing papers for an AMS journal or something, you were on it.
Oh, yeah. We were pretty raucous in the house a week ago. A little bit quieter tonight.
Like a pretty well. Where are they in the playoffs? They're in, right?
Well, they're in, but they gave away the shop last night or yesterday. Losing to the Bills, that was a tough one.
Uh-oh.
Now they may have to go through Seattle to get to the Super Bowl, which is not a good road.
No. But what's interesting to me is this Southern Division, where all these teams are like 3-8 and 3-9, and it's like that's just really strange stuff. All right, well, it's good to have you back, John. John is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and we've got Aubrey Urbanowitz who's back, and boy, we're glad you're back. When you're here, everything the boys calm down, the boys behave.
No, they don't.
So how are you?
Good. Busy. Been working a lot on the house this weekend, and my husband's been in his basement workshop, so working on projects and getting a lot done. And I'm off tomorrow to work on projects, so.
Cool. It's a busy time of the year.
Busy.
But how's the weather in lovely Charlottesville, Virginia?
Harrisonburg, close to Charlottesville.
Oh!
We are.
That's personal foul on the host, misidentification of the panelist. That is a 15-yard penalty, automatic. Personal.
That's an ejection to the second half.
No, it's been beautiful this weekend. We were at 57 on Sunday. It was gorgeous. And we're watching the potential of a weekend possible system potential.
I think everybody on this show should post some outrageous 340-hour model output. We just need to just post it out there. Pick the most outrageous output you can find, indicating that your market's going to be buried in snow and you're calling it first, and this is it.
That's right.
I came in and one of our anchors was like, "Oh my gosh, aren't you so excited about the weekend?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." These people have sucked the life out of me when it comes to winter weather. They've taken all the enjoyment out of a little bit of snow.
What time will it hit my neighborhood?
I'm telling you, my job is shifted now to mainly putting away this hype machine. I've had at least, I'd say, a dozen people via social media today, these are private Facebook messages, whatever, asking me if the Alabama snow this weekend is going to be a big one on Saturday. And where I live, there is no evidence anywhere of anything but rain. I mean, none, period, none. But yet all these sites are saying there's going to be a big snowstorm in Alabama this weekend. And it's clickbait stuff. It's the same guys looking for clicks. And so my job, a lot of my day is spent just putting down this junk. And it's very frustrating. I know your pain, Aubrey. I think it affects all of us. And it's taking some of the enjoyment out of these winter weather forecasting events. But anyway,
James, I gotta ask.
That's what's rolling in my neighborhood.
Go ahead, John.
I just want to make sure that there is a celestial body called the sun out there still. Has anybody seen it?
Sounds like you're looking for it.
We saw it today. It was definitely here.
Yeah, John, you need to come down here and visit your buddy Fischel. We've seen nothing but sunshine for about the last week, and it's been great. We had 60
I was going to say, we had sunny for 3 days.
Yeah.
Have you been watching our weather up here?
I know your weather up there.
We've been stuck between, or I should say, beneath the mother of all inversions. It's like something in Anchorage, Alaska.
It's like the Denora fog adventure all over again, huh?
It is. It is so dark and dreary up here.
Wow.
Help.
You look kind of depressed, John. You want us to sing "You Are My Sunshine" or something? I mean,
that would be great. Just get my Packers on the winning column again.
That's all that matters. That's right. Be at AMS in 3.5 weeks, John.
That's right.
Nate, you've been hearing Nate Johnson. Nate is in Raleigh, North Carolina. Nate, you've had some sunny, comfortable weather.
It's been gorgeous. I joked that I filled in for our weekend morning meteorologist yesterday morning, and it's sort of a running joke that every time I fill in, it's severe clear. I can't remember the last time I filled in for Mike Moss, and I had anything but sunny skies and beautiful weather to report on, to the point where I'm starting to think that maybe he's sandbagging us on his forecasting ability, and he's picking these days, weeks, months in advance, going, that day's going to be good, and I don't want to know what his secret is, because he's picking some really nice days to not be in the office.
Exactly. Sounds suspicious. Bill Murray's back from an absence last week. Bill, you were AWOL. You want to share where you were? Were you hiding somewhere on a trip?
No, actually, we closed on a house, James, and so we've been painting and working hard around the house for the last week or so. So Monday night was the night of purchasing things at Home Depot. You know how that goes.
The home despot.
That's exciting. We'll bring in our guests before they hang up on us.
Yeah, James. We've got a trio of Oklahoma meteorologists on the show tonight. We're just one card short of a 4 of a kind. If we'd had Rick here, we would have definitely had a winning hand, but I think we got a winning hand anyway. Tonight's first guest, WeatherBrains, the chief at Fox 23 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. James Adelot, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Now, James, we met at Salt Lake City at NWA, so we're going to talk a little bit about a poster and a project that you studied a lot about tonight in the Broken Arrow tornado. Set that scene for us, and then we'll introduce Stephen. Talk about that tornado for a second. What was significant about it to you?
Well, since it happened in May of 2013, this one sort of was under the radar, if you'll pardon the pun, a little bit, because it wasn't El Reno, it wasn't more, but it was an event that pretty much screamed with mesoanalysis, I'm going to produce a tornado and I'm going to produce it here. And it behaved perfectly. It was a great case study as to why radar analysis and almost mesoscale analysis could be more important in trying to diagnose exactly where the thunderstorm will be at its most threatening as it moves along its life cycle. As Les Lemon said, it's not a thing, it's a process. So that's what's neat about it. And we had some other little things come in, like side lobe contamination and velocity data, and Steve is the expert about that. And he was here working at the National Weather Service while I was about 5 minutes away at the TV station. So kind of two different perspectives on the same event.
Well, outstanding. That's a great segue to bring in our second guest weather brain. He's the chief meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Tulsa. Stephen Pills, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We're really excited to have you on here, Steve. We've sort of been remiss in not having you earlier, so I'm glad that when I talked to James, he recommended that we bring you as well. So that's outstanding. So anything you want to add right there before we get into the meat of the tornado in just a minute after we introduce Shelby?
Well, just what James said, that the mesoscale data pointed as much as the radar data did, and so in some aspects it was one of these deals where you kind of think you know what's going to happen, but it's still hard to get a warning on it with as much lead time as you like, because when it finally decided to show itself on radar, it happened very quickly.
Well, good. Well, we'll spend a lot of time talking about that tornado and lots of other things. And in the pre-show tonight, we touched on one of the things that you're really passionate about, and I think that's drones, right?
Yeah, it was a Christmas gift a couple of years ago, and they're fun, and you just have to be careful with them.
Oh, good. Well, they come up from time to time on this show because there's some aficionados here, too, so it'll be a fun discussion later. But we're glad to have you on the show, Stephen. Thanks for letting us use your venue tonight, and thanks for being here.
Sure, glad to.
And by the way, the FedEx man brings my drone Wednesday.
All right.
So we'll see how long it is before I crash it and get mad.
There you go. Exactly. That's what would happen to me. And last but certainly not least tonight, guest panelist number 3 is one of our alums. She appeared back sometime, Shelby. I never could pin down exactly when you were here, but she's doing weekend mornings at Cocoa in Oklahoma City. And Shelby, it's nice to have you back on the show.
Hey, thanks, Phil. It's great to be back. Good to see you guys.
So, Shelby, your career has been rocketing since we saw you last. I think you were in Fort Smith when we talked, and now you're in Oklahoma City, sort of the one of the Super Bowls of weather, I think. So talk about how that transition happened for you.
Oh, gosh. One of those times when just everything falls into place. It all works out like it's supposed to. Getting to come home, and this is where I wanted to be a meteorologist my entire life, and I finally got the chance to do that. Or I say finally. I already got the chance to do that. It's exciting.
Well, you've had an interesting life to this point, Shelby. Obviously, you graduated from the University of Oklahoma. I read that you had 2 knees operated on. Is that right? Because of sports.
Yeah, I did. That's funny. I had both ACLs redone playing basketball.
Wow. I doubt many meteorologists can say that. James, can you think of another meteorologist that's had to have both their knees scoped out by Dr. Jim Andrews?
Wow.
Shelby, wait a minute. You said you injured these knees playing basketball?
Yeah, I haven't got to talk about that in a long time. I quit playing after high school, but had knee surgeries in 7th grade and in sophomore year.
I bet you Shelby's one of those elbow throwers. You know, she gets in the middle and just hacks on people. That's the reason I quit playing basketball. My nose almost came off from those elbow throwers.
I was on both ends of that. I may have thrown a few, may have taken a few.
I think the next time we go to Oklahoma City, we ought to challenge her to a game of horse. That's the only thing I still play when it comes to basketball. We'll see who wins.
Well, we'll all be there next October for NWA, and we'll have to have a 5-on-5 pickup game. I bet Dr. John Scala can play some basketball.
I play a little bit, but like Shelby, I've had 2 knee operations myself, so I know a little bit about what she's talking about.
Well, good. Well, it's nice to have you on the show tonight, Shelby, and we'll be glad to have the Oklahoma City perspective from you. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, so go back, James, and set the stage again. Give us the overview of this tornado. When was it, and what sort of impact did it have, and then we'll get into the meat of it.
Well, Keep in mind, I have 2 toddlers that are 18 months apart, so my memory specifics have faded a little bit. But we're talking end of June. I'm sorry, end of May 2013. So May 30th, I believe, local time was the. Well, let me look. Yeah, May 30th, May 31st Zulu, and we had a small needle tornado form about 20 miles east of Tulsa from some earlier convection, about 2 hours or so before this storm developed. It had supercell characteristics off and on as it crossed Tulsa. There was a severe thunderstorm warning. We had our TV station chasers on it. The WCM from the National Weather Service was also chasing it. So we had good visuals on the storm as it moved across Tulsa. And we were already on the air with it as it got close to where the main intersection of Helicity, Cape, and Lowest Sin was. That's when we had explosive development, and that's when it produced a tornado. And this so happened to be about 2 miles from the terminal Doppler radar, and we have some 1-minute data from that, which is just kind of, it's really spectacular. And we were kind of an aside, we'll steer off course just a second, but we were at the station babysitting some overnight storms, and Nate's been there. We plugged in a black and white color table on the radar just to see what it looked like, just to go kicking it old school one night. And then I came out to the Weather Service and was looking at the day with Steve and told him, hey, you know, last night we were looking at some of this stuff in grayscale. We kicked grayscale on the terminal Doppler radar, and it was unbelievably cool. So we've got a couple of those images we can share for you tonight too. It was pretty neat. It ended up being an F2 tornado. Went right across what somehow missing a lot of housing. Thankfully, it really picked what could be an ideal path to miss where people were that night. So F2 tornado. I'm not even sure if there were any injuries from it or not. And moderate risk day from SBC, if I remember right. It was. I mean, we were all on point. This didn't sneak up on anybody.
So you mentioned the mesoanalysis there, James, and you know, talk about how that factored into the real time when you're in the middle of the battle, the heat of the battle. You know, what do you know, in hindsight, what do you wish you had known, or what do you wish you had at your fingertips, or you know, what did you miss as you were covering the storm?
The problem I see is one that I think a lot of TV people see, and that is you spend so much time showing radar, doing the viewer interaction, that you don't have a lot of time to do mesoanalysis. You pitch for team coverage out to a chaser or one of the other weather people.
Absolutely.
They talk for a while, and you've got 30 seconds to quickly rebrief yourself, and it's just not enough time. Steve, the National Weather Service here puts a lot of mesoanalysis things for the county warning area on their webpage. Steve can talk a little bit about some of that stuff, because that was critical that night leading into the storm, pointing to the fact the severe thunderstorm warning was posted for Tulsa as this thing moved in, and we were on point because we expected it to continue to develop and eventually produce a tornado in the metro area. So we were already on the air with it, which in a way is good, but in a way is not good, because it reduces the time you have to brief yourself, since as the chief you're sort of the captain of the coverage.
So Stephen, talk about it from a Weather Service perspective. You know, how did this tornado come out in your estimation in terms of, you know, your performance, your team's performance that night?
Well, kind of like we hinted at the beginning, that it was really a good testament to how well mesoscale analysis can be. We actually had Tulsa County emergency management people moving to a Broken Arrow before the tornado warning was issued. And it was all based on interactions on chat. As James said, we saw the intersection of the helicity and the lower inhibition and some of the higher instability. And we just kept saying, as this storm gets to the east side of the Tulsa metro area, tornado chances are going to increase. And so the EMs responded to that. They began to move towards Broken Arrow some. But as you look at some of the radar data here in a minute, you can see that the actual spin up, when you can really begin to say now it's starting to happen, it went very quickly. And so from a wanting to do better standpoint would be to try to have a little more confidence in some of that mesoscale data and maybe issue those tornado warnings even before the radar begins to show everything you might want to see.
So having the terminal Doppler there was very important this night in your warning process, correct?
It was vital. The rapid updates, and it was point blank. The terminal Doppler is actually north Broken Arrow, and so it collected research quality data, and at the same time was giving the forecasters minute by minute data that led to the warning to come out as quick as it did.
And so that's really good, having that information. Talk about it, from an evolution standpoint, the rapid, evolution of this mesocyclone that led to the tornado genesis. Stephen, talk about that for a minute.
Well, it was an interesting storm that it had existed for quite a while. It formed well west of the Tulsa metro area, and it was a struggling severe thunderstorm. It would occasionally produce quarter-size hail. It would occasionally get a look. From the office windows, we're up on the third floor, and so we could see to the west some. We could see a wall cloud kind of form to the west, but it really didn't take off until it got about halfway across the metro area. Then all of a sudden, the 2-inch hail report started to come in. The hail size doubled. Spotters began to report some changes in the character of the cloud base, and that's when it all went very quickly. And so it was a storm that you could almost let your guard down on because you've watched it for over an hour now, and it's really underperformed. But you're sitting there telling the rest of the warning team, like, this thing still could take off when it gets to the other side of the metro area. That's ultimately what it did.
So talk about the importance, first from your perspective, Stephen, of National Weather Service chat, in this storm situation. And then, James, you follow up from the media side because we all see the value of this. Talk about in this situation how it helped both of you.
Well, for part of our end of it, getting the emergency management folks moving toward Broken Arrow basically was triggered off of the chat. They were watching these updates and the concern that we were putting in there, and we actually, and to some weather officers it would be surprising, but we use GFE, the software that's designed to put out the forecast. We use that to calculate helicity and CAPE and cap index. You've already got data in a gridded format, and it's at high resolution, and forecasters can interact with it. So why not use that as an analysis tool? And so we have access to a pretty high resolution data set, and so we try to share that on chat. And so we know what James explained, that you guys are on there talking a lot, and if we can give information that they can just glance over very quickly, see that, we can all get right back on the same page within a few minutes. And we think it's vital in all of our severe weather events.
How about you, James, from the media standpoint?
The Weather Service here is very proactive about chat interaction, mesoscale updates, things, as Steve said, to give us a clue when we may not have time to fully brief ourselves. And we're very interactive back. There's no secrecy. All the 4 TV stations here, when we get reports, we'll shoot them into the chat for the Weather Service to disseminate. And it's worked out really well. In fact, I think the one thing, if somebody asked me what tool that I could least do without now during a severe weather event, is chat with the Weather Service here in Tulsa. They're just that good with giving us updates and just kind of what they're thinking. A lot of times it'll be we're all watching the same storm. Okay, I'm seeing this mid-level rotation increase, so we're thinking of it too, and then to get a note from the Weather Service, hey, if this keeps going one more volume scan, we're pulling the trigger on the warning. So that gives us a big heads up.
And that helps a lot. Shelby, talk about from your standpoint in Oklahoma City, obviously a very hot weather market too. How does the chat work in your market?
Gotta unmute. Sorry about that, guys. I honestly don't know about Oklahoma City. I worked with Tulsa when I was in Fort Smith, and they're fantastic. And just like everyone's been saying, an echo to that, when you're on air, or even if you're not the person on air, maybe you're the one on social media. I know that becomes my role a lot of times during severe weather, and just being able to have that information coming in from people you trust is so fantastic.
Well, I would throw out too, with the markets that the Tulsa office gets to work with, Tulsa, Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Northwest Arkansas. It's really it's a great bunch of folks, and everybody interacts. There's a constant sharing of information back and forth, and it's really fun. If you watch a Tulsa chat sometime, if you get a chance to log into it, you'll see a very friendly atmosphere, joking back and forth, and then all of a sudden it'll snap serious when the weather gets bad, and it's a fun environment to watch.
Well, that's very interesting. Talk about the 2 television markets, since we got the 3 of you on here, especially you, James, and you, Shelby. Talk about how your perceptions are of each of the 2 markets differ and how they're similar.
Oklahoma City has a lot more territory to cover and throws a lot more resources at times into the coverage they provide. It seems like it's even more competitive than most markets, and but I mean, people have asked me, don't you want to go to Oklahoma City? No, not really. That's a lot of weather there. Thankfully, our DMA is much smaller. We're just here in eastern Oklahoma, and we get a lot more after sunset convection here, so that's a little bit more of a difficulty in chase operations here. But I mean, Shelby's seen it. She grew up there. It's from 2 o'clock in the afternoon all the way to sunset in Oklahoma City, and it can be hours on end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Shelby, give your impressions, your perceptions.
You know, when I was interviewing in Oklahoma City, one of the things Damon talked about, he was like, you know, a lot of people don't really understand the Oklahoma City market, and that was something that I understood because I grew up watching it, interned in Oklahoma City for 2 years with Gary England. So it was just like I did understand that, and it is different. I know we had EF0 tornado yesterday, and it was wall-to-wall coverage with everyone having their TVs on, and you know, maybe you don't do that other places. I don't know. I've only ever lived in Oklahoma City market, so that's just really all I know.
So, James, back to you for a second. Talk about, you know, when we were discussing in the pre-call earlier this week, we're talking about the importance of watching, you know, a classic supercell develop in this situation. Talk about the Lemon and Doswell technique for a second, and why that was important to you that day as you were monitoring the storm.
Yeah, it didn't dawn on me until Steve said, hey, it's just like the evolution of the mesocyclones in the Doswell Lemon paper from 1979. And if you Google it, you'll find it online. I highly recommend any person that's watching this with or listening to this with weather interest to Google that Lemon Doswell paper from 1979. And we saw when we went back and looked at the rotational velocity that we had an initial mesocyclone develop, classic mid-level, starts stretching, starts intensifying. That's the point when at the TV station we knew, okay, the warning's coming, the warning's coming, the warning's coming. Then it starts weakening, and the mesocyclone initially starts shrinking, weakening, and then we had rapid low-level mesocyclone development at the same time our spotters on the storm, and this was at about sunset. So at the same time, our spotters on the storm were saying, it's really tightening up, the towers are going crazy right now, I'm getting strong updraft in the rain-free base. It's visually going to, it just looks like it's going to produce right now. So to see that, in fact, let me see if I can through, see if you can share this picture. This is the time series of the rotational velocities. So kind of hard to, hopefully we get the resolution there you need to see. I've kind of contoured in green, that's the 30 knot rotational velocity, yellow is the 40 knot, and red's the 50 knot. And that's over about, that's Zulu time across the bottom, so, or UTC. So you see that mid-level, the initial mid-level mesocyclone develop, stretch toward the ground a little bit, and then it weakens on a couple of volume scans there in the middle of the graph, about 126. And then look how fast that second mesocyclone develops. And we had tornado genesis just before its peak intensity, if I remember right. I'll try to advance this and see if we. Yep, we went. Yeah, I thought we had the actual tornado time listed on there, but it was, I think, on the second volume scan where you see that 47 knot rotational velocity at the lowest tilt. That's when we actually had the tornado contact the ground. And so we're talking one volume scan. This is pre-sales on the 88 degrees. So one volume scan of explosive development, and we had a tornado occur.
Wow. So, Stephen, talk about just the cascade of data that you have to manage as a National Weather Service meteorologist, because you have way more than even we have in our environments, and we have a lot. You know, how are you managing this explosion of data, you know, in these warning situations like this?
well, we've had to set up special desks. We have a mesoscale desk that sits behind the warning forecasters. Like Shelby mentioned, you have a social media desk we do in the weather office, and a lot of weather offices do too. And so there's a social media desk watching reports. There's generally one forecaster watching all the other environmental data, whether it's surface data, it's high resolution data. We run 3 local models, also looking at the HERB, updraft helicity, swaths. And so that mesoscale forecaster is, for one, typing into chat saying, hey, we're seeing this, and also briefing the warning forecaster saying, this is what we see now, this is what you might anticipate. I think James is going to try to bring an example of one of these local analysis stuff. This is created within our graphical forecast editor, which it's interesting that within our GFE we can create a sounding, we can look at a hodograph, and what's nice about being able to do objective analysis here is that, say I'm the mesoscale forecaster, I can determine, do I want to put the WRF NAM as the upper conditions, or do I want to put the RAP? Then I do an objective analysis on the surface data, and I can look for problems if I think that surface station has an issue, maybe it's dew point stuck at a value, or I can QC the data before I hit the buttons and say, give me CAPE, give me helicity, give me shear, give me those things. And so I can do that. Plus the helicity's turned out to be an interesting thing for us over the years is I can go in and change the storm motion. And so the forecaster can say, hey Steve, give me helicity now with this storm motion vector. And I know a lot of folks would maybe think it's sort of unusual, but we have warning forecasters in Tulsa that keep GFE up on one of their AWEB screens and ask me to basically custom analyze situations ahead of storms, and I can pop these graphics up in front of them so they can see that and compare that to the radar data. James has shared one of the helicity graphics, and you can see the little axis that runs from the Tulsa area back into northeast Oklahoma, and there has been the earlier tornadoes in this evening further east, and that one cell kept working toward the higher helicity, the higher CAPE, and you just start thinking that out. Something bad could happen here, and in this case it did.
So, Steve, talk for a moment about innovations that you're especially proud of in your office, because I know all Weather Service offices are staffed with these talented men and women, and some of the greatest things that are happening in weather right now are coming out of Weather Service offices. Talk about that. Any element of a skunk works that you got going there in Tulsa that you're especially proud of.
Well, part of it is using GFE for objective analysis. The other part then ties into that, where now that we have an objective analysis grid in there, now we're also putting in thunderstorm pedals, where we're taking lightning data and radar data and projecting out swaths of thunderstorm probability out 1 to 2 hours into the future. Now I can take those data and compare that to the environmental data and try to modulate how those swaths of probabilities look. And then I can also then take that and create severe weather probability graphics underneath that, and so the whole thing begins to cascade. You do the analysis, you can create these pedals, you can create conditional grids, and from that we kind of bridge in between the watch and the warning with all these different data sets. And James, I know he'd mentioned at some point that you're supposed to ask me about it, chiclets. We force a lot of stuff onto a web page that has little colored icons that show these threat levels changing, and on our web page some of it updates every 10 minutes, which is pretty slick.
Yeah. Steve, it sounded like you're talking a little bit about some of the stuff that Lance Rothfuse is working with for the future of warnings. Explain a little further about what you meant there with the probabilities and the storm pedals, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the storm pedals, we use the lightning and radar data to create kind of a pedal downstream of where the thunderstorm is, and so we have this probability that runs out there. And then that actually, if nothing else, sits on top of our thunderstorm forecast. Forecasters every day make what's the chance of thunderstorms for the next 7 days. We just happen to do it within a grid, and so now we can lay those pedals on top of our thunderstorm forecast and for the near term. And then the forecasters having those data in place, we can then work on these conditional probability threats where we can say, okay, given a storm, what do you, forecaster, think the chance is of having severe weather happen? And so we can have a forecaster make that grid, multiply the two together, and in the end you have a severe weather probability or even a tornado probability being both a person-machine mix that's coming from all this integrated data, which I think could be a good stepping stone between what we think of now as worn-on forecasts, where we think of modeling and those types of things. We can do things now that let us experiment with that and see what customers think of that and how they might use that. So we do some of that.
There he is. We lost Bill.
Did Bill die?
I scared him with all that.
You see, he hung up on us. Wow.
I ran for cover.
Exactly. Oh, Bill. Now we can't hear a word we're saying. We can talk with you about it.
Now's your chance.
He looks stunned.
Yeah. Well, can I ask a question then? If we're going to let Bill try to come back.
Go, John. Go.
Yeah. Stephen and James, I'm curious. A couple, 10, 15 years ago, Chuck Doswell wrote a paper, and I think it was entitled "The Human in Forecasting." I think that's what it was. I was wondering if you could comment on the role of objective analysis and the use of the human in developing these short-term forecasts.
Well, yeah, I think the human still has potentially a large role in that. I know that we're moving more and more to local modeling and higher scale, finer scale models and rapid temporal updates and those types of things. But I still see, especially for very rapid, short-term severe weather probabilities, that the human is in there, and the human is looking at all this stuff. And so if you're pulling all this information to within GFE, which again, it wasn't designed to do, but you can do it, the human can get just, it can get neck deep into all this weather data and actually make products that will look like some of the stuff that Lance talks about with these probability swaths that run out into the future. And you don't have to just hope that a model caught something. You have the human interacting in there, QCing the data, looking, say, at the bad winds, going, I think I like the wrap right now over the wharf NAM, so I'm going to lift my parcels into this model versus that model, and the objective analysis is alive and changing on the forecaster's discretion.
Show title, Lift My Parcels.
I'm surprised that after almost 500 shows, we haven't used Lift My Parcels as a show title yet.
We're using it this week. That's definitely it. You got that, Brian?
I got it.
All right, Steve. Thanks for covering there, guys. Well, I lost my bandwidth there for a second. So, Steve, talk about the NDFD and using short-term nowcasting type stuff, and being able to put that sort of information into the NDFD. Is that even possible with the workload that a weather service forecaster has?
It can be done right now. A lot of when that happens, it can happen in an automated fashion behind the scenes when the weather's maybe not super critical and it's just augmenting. But I think when you really have those days, and I think maybe Dave Andrew coined the phrase, the days you want to win, when you have those days, you can put that mesoscale forecaster in there and you can have that person interact within those grids. And then it's just a matter of what can your ITs come up with to help you blend things. And we're just very fortunate to have Jamie Frederick here, who's both an IT and a meteorologist, and we say, Jamie, we need this. You don't have to tell him why. He says, oh yeah, I see that, and I can make it better. And so when you have that set up, you can do stuff.
That really is a sweet spot when you've got an IT that's a meteorologist of that caliber, isn't it?
It really is. We couldn't do a lot of the things that we do now, and a lot of things we like to probe around and look at and wonder about if Jamie wasn't here.
Well, props to Jamie and all those ITs out there that are outstanding. So, James, talk for a moment about side lobe contamination and why that was a factor in this tornado and the warning for it.
Let's see if we've got the graphic on here. I'm thumbing through the.
Oh yeah.
I think we have an old version on here. Now, Steve and Don Burgess have actually talked about this a little bit. Steve brought it to my attention, and that is essentially your side lobes are not only horizontal, they're also vertical because there's actually a good pause right there. This is a pretty good velocity pick. This is from about 20 miles away. We're looking back at the mesocyclone as it's starting. This is about 15 minutes before it produced the tornado. So this is the weakening stage of the initial mesocyclone, and just to the southwest of that community of Alsuma there, you see very, very strong inbounds. That actually is about 117 miles per hour on about 800 feet. Did we say 800 feet up, I think?
I think so.
Okay, about 800 feet up. And so immediately your first thought is the thing's spinning up right now over a populated area. We've got chasers there. Still not really seeing anything too exciting on this storm. Well, velocity data, your side lobes getting up in the overhang of the bee were, and that's contaminating what you're seeing off what it's displaying on the main lobe. I'm not doing a real good job of explaining this. Steve can do this a lot better than I am, but you're basically getting winds aloft contaminating your main lobe, what the radar thinks is your main lobe velocity. And it shows up a lot in velocity, and the one trick to get through this is it is a very noisy image in spectrum width when you have this take place. So under this, where it looks like we've got two folds of, or at least one fold of inbound wind, your spectrum width is very, very noisy in here. It's not a very clean image at all. So nobody gives spectrum width any love, but when I talked to Les Lemon about this in May, he said, always look at spectrum width. Nobody gives it any love, but always look at spectrum width. And we looked at several other supercells just armchairing using Gibson Ridge on Saturdays and Sundays in Nebraska last June, I believe, and there were, I bet half the mesocyclones had this side lobe contamination, and there's a sweet spot, seems like it's between 40 and 15 miles away from the radar site that it seems to really be a problem. I'll let Steve go on more about this because he's the expert that brought it to my attention.
So you did good, James. Yeah, I just think that we see these signatures that you bring these very fast velocities from higher up and you superimpose them down on what you think is the 0.5 velocity data. Now, as meteorologists, we're presented with a rapid increase in velocities in a supercell, and you instantly think, oh, we're imminent for a tornado. On this particular day, the storm went on and made the tornado, but there's a lot of days it doesn't. And I really think that over the course of time, we issue tornado warnings on velocity signatures that really never needed tornado warnings. And if we could figure that out, we could cut the false alarm rate back by a noticeable amount. I don't know how much yet, but I think you could do that.
That's always a subject that's near and dear to our hearts, Steve. So, you got any early theories that you can share with us that you're kind of leading in the clubhouse as to how we can do that with that sort of data?
Well, a lot of these signatures when they show up forward of the reflectivity appendage, and you start looking at it and say, hey, that rotational velocity, it's forward of where I think the hook's trying to form, or just where the reflectivity appendage is. And so in the end, you begin to say they're a little bit out of phase, but they're only maybe a mile or two out, and is that enough? And we've not studied it well enough, but I think watching some of that and seeing that if the couplet's running out ahead of the reflectivity, and especially if you can check, if you can look and say, okay, where I see these bad velocity data, and the spectrum width will tell you. But also I think, too, one thing Don and I kind of looked at when we looked at the 88D specs was that if you have more than about 50 dBz of reflectivity difference between what you see in the inflow region and what you find in the beware, you have to consider the chance that the velocities are messed up. The side lobes are supposed to be suppressed in the 88D by 27 dB, so if you take the double path of that, that's about 54 dB, that's where that comes from. And so anytime, say you find 70 dB up in the beware and you have 5 dB in the inflow area, you're well exceeding that threshold that side lobe contamination can happen, and you have to consider it as possible and just put that in your mix of thinking.
I can see your screen, by the way. You may want to stop sharing.
And don't show any passwords there, Steven.
Yeah.
Whoops. That's James. He's up to something. I don't know what he's up to here.
Well, it's James Adelot. You can never really be sure if it's safe for work, which is why we
That was a good call.
Nightcallnurses.com.
So Steve, I want to just repackage what you said to see if I can wrap my head around the implications of what you found with the side lobes. That essentially, that if we're looking at a velocity signature within, say, 15 to 40 miles of the radar site, and you're getting numbers that are high, you should check spectrum width. And if spectrum width shows a relative maximum in that area, you should perhaps not trust the velocity data as much as you would otherwise trust it. Is that it in a nutshell?
Yeah, and you'll find that the noisy spectrum width perfectly matches the anomalously high velocity data, and it can happen more than 40 miles away. It probably is just more prevalent there, but it can happen at further ranges as well. Go ahead.
I remember from my radar class many moons ago when I had hair, that spectrum width would be, spectrum width being a measure of the sort of the how random the velocities are of the individual particles within a radar volume, that you would have actually with a tornado, you would have a relative maximum of spectrum width. And so I guess the question is, how do you filter out the actual high, what should we say, the high spectrum width due to just the violence of a tornado from the spectrum width of the high spectrum width along with your side lobe contamination?
Well, part of it would be in the reflectivity itself. If it's really rotating like the velocities would suggest, the reflectivity will come around and wrap up into a hook. A lot of times what we see is this is filling up a lot of the low reflectivity area ahead of the reflectivity appendage. And so if you look and see that those velocities are high, but you look at the actual reflectivity data that's associated with it, it's probably only going to be on the order of 5 or 10 dB, something like that.
Aha.
Yeah, here you go. Look at the.
Just shared something. Yeah.
It's like James knew exactly where I was going with that question before I asked.
Did.
I'm not sure what that says about you, James, but I can't imagine it's good.
It's nothing good. Yeah, it's something warped. But you can think that's 0.5 base reflectivity upper left and 5.1 lower left. So you can see the reflectivity difference. We're over very low reflectivity on the base tilt, but very high reflectivity, which is causing that side lobe contamination. And look in the circle at spectrum width. It's just ridiculously noisy right under that spurious velocity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the spectrum width that gets no love, but it sure does seem to solve this issue.
And you can see as soon as the velocity goes from those bright greens and blues inbounds and changes back into the reds, you see that very sharp spectrum width gradient on where he's circled there in the lower right. It's pixel for pixel that it'll match, and it can flag that. And if you think that you need about 54 dBz to have this effect, what you start thinking, what's the maximum reflectivity you've ever seen in a beware? 70 dBz, thereabouts, something like that. Take 50 off of that, and so you can probably just put in the back of your mind, anytime I see velocities with reflectivity less than 20 dBz in the inflow of a supercell, I probably ought to at least consider it.
And this is kind of a cross-section view of a representation of what the side lobe signal is hitting that high reflectivity while the main lobe is down below in the weak echo region. So it's, how many, do we have time to check this every time? Well, we probably ought to now, seeing this.
Well, I tell you what, guys, just watching WeatherBrains tonight makes me want to pop some popcorn and sit back and just be a weather nerd. Because I think pound for pound, that's about as interesting a discussion as we've ever had from a weather standpoint. So, outstanding stuff. So, guys, talk about the Broken Arrow tornado in light of the fact that it came after the May 19th and 20th events in Oklahoma. Did that make you treat this event any differently?
I think so. From a media standpoint, everybody in the state was, to say on point. We've already discussed on WeatherBrains the psychological impact of the El Reno tornado and the fact that it came 10 days after more, and what that did, at least leading into that whole setup with people in central Oklahoma. And I think this one, we were very careful going in to be very measured and say, hey, we will likely have severe weather this evening. We're in this risk. All the ingredients are here. Stay calm, stay informed, and you have to almost spend more time on the stay calm aspect, have a plan aspect, than you do it's coming, it's coming. And I think it's easier for us as broadcasters and end users. The easy way out is to say it's coming, watch us, we'll keep your family safe. Not your family needs to have a plan. That's the harder route. And I think when you had El Reno and when you had more just in the 2 weeks preceding this, that just kind of being deliberately probably more measured and calmer than you would have been any other event when something like this. I mean, El Reno and more incredibly rare events, to have two back-to-back, and everybody was just, I say on point, but this was a nervous state.
So did you see any different behavior in the Tulsa market from people related to their perception of the risk based on what had just recently happened?
I still think there's a significant deniability that goes on when nothing has happened in your area in the last, however many years. The last EF4 or stronger tornado in Tulsa was 1993. So I still think there's this deniability mentality that people have, and I'm sure Steve can talk about this too, just seeing that in the spotter talks. But I think there was an increased awareness by what happened in Oklahoma City, because we covered it not quite to the level that the Oklahoma City stations did, of course, but we were down there for 10 days live, and it was a significant relief efforts, drives happened in eastern Oklahoma for central Oklahoma, and then to have this roll our way. People were nervous, probably more so than I think I've seen on a moderate or high-risk day in eastern Oklahoma in quite some time, and I think it was because of more El Reno.
I think you guys had trouble too, John. Not trouble, but you had the challenge too that Broken Arrow happened the day before El Reno. So you're trying to cover Tulsa Metro damage, and now you've got this whole El Reno story that's unfolding that also needs to be covered. And watching you guys try to cover that is just amazing.
We were stretched thin. Of course, nothing like the Oklahoma City market, but you just gotta put the information out and hope people reacted in an appropriate way.
Hey, fellas, every severe weather market is different, and when it comes to Tulsa, and I'll ask Shelby about this for Oklahoma City, in terms of the weather enterprise, and that's Weather Service, broadcast Mets, the weather enterprise, what is the strength and what is the greatest weakness in the Tulsa market?
You want me to go first?
Go, James.
It's that MIC at the National. No. I think the in Tulsa for us is a lot of this stuff happens at sunset or later. That makes it harder to get visual. I think people react faster and with more assertiveness when they actually see video of a tornado. And oftentimes we're dealing with post-sunset tornadoes in eastern Oklahoma. Not always. I mean, I'm a firm believer in the Chuck Doswell saying that Mother Nature doesn't own a calendar, an alarm clock, or a road map. Anytime the ingredients are together, you can have it. But I think that's probably our biggest problem. And the recency deniability that we haven't had a violent tornado in Tulsa County since 1993. We're overdue. As Steve said, you put a dot on Joplin and a dot on Moore, draw a line in between, Tulsa's halfway. It can happen here.
You're right. It will at some point. But you do hear that more and more, that they always weaken coming up the turnpike. They always weaken coming up the turnpike. Nothing ever gets here. And we do have our tornadoes, and we do have less population density. Sometimes we've hidden some pretty significant tornadoes in Osage County and parts of the areas immediately outside of Tulsa that, again, you run into things where you can't rate them, and they're out there, and so you put them down as F1 or 2, but chasers are telling you that's more like a 3 or a 4, but you just couldn't prove it. So sometimes I think Tulsa doesn't know the tornadoes that have just been big near misses for it.
How are you guys doing with POD and FAR?
When we have reasonable severe weather seasons, that we can actually have storms that just don't come and go quickly, like they had to deal with in central Oklahoma yesterday. I guess in 2011, our POD in Tulsa was down around 0.5, 0.55, something like that. But then we have the years too where it's going to be 0.7, 0.8 when you're dealing with these fast spin ups and you're not having conventional years. But we've seen a drop in our FAR some, because we've had some of these discussions about side lobe contamination, and forecasters not automatically saying that's got to be tornadic, I got to go with the warning. You're hearing more discussion go on, and ultimately that can be a good thing, but it makes you nervous because you don't want to miss anything, knowing that you still will. I mean, we detect 9 out of 10. That means we miss 1 out of 10. That's going to happen, but we're better. But I would really like to see at some point at least a 0.5 FAR come from some of this work, because we really, as meteorologists, we need to be better than where we are right now.
All right, and real quick, Bill, my last question for Shelby. Strengths and weaknesses of the weather enterprise in Oklahoma City. Don't beat around the bush. Just come out with it.
No, I think from my standpoint, I think resources answer both of those questions. We have so many resources. We've got the storm chasers, the helicopters. I don't know how many people chase tornadoes with helicopters, but it's pretty awesome in terms of getting somewhere quickly. Maybe it's a rural area with bad roads, and you just really have the ability to be able to show people what you're seeing or what they could be seeing. But on the other hand, you're covering wall to wall a tornado that's not really affecting many people. It's out in the middle of nowhere and it's not causing any damage. And then it's this hype that, do they care when we talk? Because, we're always talking about a tornado. And the thing that's bothering me right now, yesterday we had EF0 tornado in East Edmond. Well, the tornado sirens sounded. I know we all love tornado sirens, but the tornado sirens are sounding in Central and West Edmond, so west of this EF0 tornado. They're sounding in Oklahoma City, southwest of this EF0 tornado. They even sounded in Norman, according to a few people. So all of these people are just so used to hearing these tornado sirens going off and absolutely nothing happening. The city of Oklahoma City actually tweeted out, and they said, the reason that we sound the sirens is because there was a tornado warning in our county. So 20 years ago, that's fine. Tornado warning in our county. We are so much better than that, so much past that why aren't we updating these policies? Why are they still sounding the sirens when there's a tornado warning east of them that has no threat to the people that are hearing the tornado sirens? So then, everybody's turning their TV on, which I guess in terms is good for TV people, but people don't trust us. They're like, tornado sirens again. They don't know who sound the sirens.
Why do people talk so much about sirens these days? What is the deal? I mean, why? Why? They reach such a limited number of people. I don't understand why they're still front of mind in these big tornado markets. Doesn't make any sense.
It's a cultural thing, and if you look at some of the places where they've tried to take them down, where they've tried to disable them, and the reasons that people come up with are, not only yes, it allows me to know when tornadoes are coming, but also it's part of the places. So in some places, for example, they sound the sirens at 8 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon. Does that, who are we doing that for? 50 years ago we were doing that for farmers in the field, but we're not doing that anymore. But it's just ingrained culturally in people's minds that that's what they want. So that's something that we're fighting in a lot of cases, is this mentality, not just that it's going to warn me of severe weather, but it's sort of always there. It's a layer of protection that we're risk averse. We don't want to give that up as a general rule. And then on top of that, the fact that, you look at the research that's been done, and sirens, it's a double-edged sword. In places where they have them, on the one hand, they are confusing. People don't know what they mean, but almost invariably, what they do is they go inside and they turn on a television, or they pull out their phone, or they turn on the radio. So it's almost like, the way I've heard it described, it's almost like a doorbell. I need to go do something. I need to go seek some more information. And anybody, I think realistically, we need to step back as an enterprise and realize that when we issue tornado warning, we go on TV and say, hey, this tornado is heading for your house, the first thing people do isn't and head straight for the shelter. They do not do that. They seek more information. They look to confirm. They look to personalize. They look to localize. And so the path isn't, we can fight human nature and say, you need to get to your shelter now, or we can work with it, provide the information that people are seeking through the pictures. Yes, that helicopter video, those pilots are nuts, but that helicopter video probably saves lives, as does the chaser video and anything else, the confirmed reports. And then for us on TV, it's all about taking that threat and translating it to streets, to landmarks, to if you pass such and such a school on the way home from work every day, this is heading for you. And helping people work through that list of things that we know they work through psychologically before they realize, oop, this really is me and I need to take shelter.
And let me throw out one more thing for all of our Oklahoma guests here. Shelby, you said sometimes your station airs tornado footage out in rural areas, and it's not affecting people. I'll kind of challenge you on that. What would you say to the criticism that after tornadoes leave the largest cities and population centers, people that live in rural counties are ignored? And why are lives in a rural county less important than those in a city?
I'm from a small town. It pains me that that came out of my mouth, and I'm glad you pointed it out because I'm the one going, hey, Valma Alma is important too. We only have 500 people that live there, but their lives are just as important. But we do that because the phone starts ringing and all of these people are like, oh, get off my TV. That doesn't affect me. And I know, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wichita, Kansas has the ability to cut into just certain areas of their viewing area.
Well,
because
the thing with Wichita is that they're covering the entire state.
Yeah.
And so when they say we can cut into different parts of the Wichita market, they're actually talking about cutting into, Goodland, Kansas, and leaving Wichita alone. But those two, any other place in the country, those aren't the same television market.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if someday we'll be able to do that and we can, only break in and to the people that this is affecting or to a certain areas rather than covering everyone's TV up and everyone going crazy about it. But no, I think the people in the rural areas are just as important.
That was the thing that we all, I think, here at REL, were sort of disappointed at in the digital TV transition, because we've got all this, you can cram more television signals in the same amount of bandwidth, and so we've got all these sub-channels, and for the most part, nobody watches the sub-channels. Well, the FCC says the satellite companies and the cable companies don't have to carry those sub-channels, and so they don't, for the most cases, and so we thought, well, hey, we're going to be able to split our signal up, and we'll be able to do weather coverage on our .2 channel and leave regular programming alone, and the people who want weather coverage can watch it, and the people who don't want to watch weather coverage and want to stick with regular programming can do that. But because very few of the cable and satellite companies carry those sub-channels, we're no better off than we were 20 years ago or 10 years ago before the DTV transition. And it's interesting, there's an article on Deadspin, of all places, which is a sports blog, talking about how CBS and the NFL worked with Sony on how the fact that the Thursday Night Football, which wound up being a bomb for CBS, was going to affect the CBS affiliates that carry Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, which is a Sony property. And at the end of it, one of the Sony executives, after they realized they've been hosed by all of this, says, well, why can't we just, use all of these these DVR boxes that are so smart and use these to pull in information, pull in a stream of programming and let the people affected, watch something. And if I want to stick with my normal program, then I can watch that instead. But we can't do that not easily. But I can't imagine there's not some... there's some innovation that needs to be done there, a little technology, and we could solve it. We've got the technology, we can save it, man.
Nate, the problem
in the meantime, we just got so somebody's going to call down here and mad because they can't watch Wheel of Fortune or Freak of the Week or my wife names her butt cheeks, all this idiocy on television. I don't care. I mean, I could care less. One of the things as an old guy, you got to do what's right, and sometimes you're going to have to just deal with these haters. So, but you guys in Tulsa, and I guess, James, I'm talking mainly about television, do you do wall-to-wall coverage for rural counties, or do you leave after it gets out of the city?
No, we're wall-to-wall now. In fact, we had... Chautauqua County, Kansas. We have 2 counties in our DMA that are in Kansas, and they're not heavily populated, one a little more so than the other, Montgomery and Chautauqua County, but I think Chautauqua County is the least populated county in our whole DMA. Wichita's CWA, my news director checks in after we had done tornado warning coverage for the least populated Oklahoma County. We had an hour break. Here comes another storm rolling out of south of Wichita towards Chautauqua County. My news director said, so what about this storm? When's it going to be moving in? I said, well, it's going to be in Chautauqua County. It's spooling up a little bit. It looks like it's increasing. I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped a TOR on it. And she said, okay. So about 10 minutes later. But the vitriol of the emails when it's even out of your state is amplified significantly over what you get in your own state, and it's epic. But you're right; you just do what's right and deal with it. I made a promise to a former boss about 15 years ago that I would not answer email complaints the day they came in. So I wait one day, and then I answer the email complaints. And that was
let me just say this. I filed them. I have a folder called Hate Mail. If I ever think I'm something special, I just go over there and read some of this stuff. It keeps your ego in check, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. But, Bill, I'm sorry. Let me go back over to you guys because I've hogged too much time here.
Yeah, one last question, James, and I'll let you wrap. And Shelby, that's for you. You were instrumental in getting Gary on our show last July. How's he doing these days?
Hey, I think he's doing great. Finally getting to, have a little fun, always seeing his pictures out with big groups of friends at dinners. And, I'm sure he misses it a little bit, but he was interesting yesterday. He went on social media and he said, hey, guys, no panic. Today's not a big deal. And immediately on the Oklahoma weather hashtag, people were like, oh, it's okay. Gary said not to panic. Everybody's still checking in on him. He's been pretty busy hanging out down in Norman with those guys at the Weather Service and with OU a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what he's up to next.
Cool. All right. Well, what we're going to do is take a very quick break here. We're going to roll Professor Peters, and we'll come back with Tony Rice and the astronomy report. We've got a lot of things to do. We've got Nate's news. We have the email inbox. We have the picks of the week, the National Weather Roundup. The best is yet to come as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
In looking at charts of the upper atmosphere, we talk about the flow of air through troughs and ridges. Usually, troughs are associated with cool environments, and ridges are associated with warm environments. But one of the most telling aspects to forecasting troughs is to examine their shape. Their orientation can help to determine whether a storm system will strengthen, weaken, or remain unchanged. There are three types of tilts: a positive tilt, a negative tilt, and, yeah, you guessed it, a neutral tilt. Just like on a graph, a line with a positive slope is one that is oriented from the lower left of the point of origin to the upper right. Thus, a positively tilted trough is one that is oriented from the southwest to the northeast. A neutral trough is oriented north to south, and a negatively tilted trough points from the northwest to the southeast. A negatively tilted trough is one which is the most recognized and has the most importance. The way this is positioned will allow a storm to grow and strengthen. Colder air will have the ability to lay on top of the warmer, more humid air that the storm is feeding from at the surface. With cold air aloft and warmer air closer to the ground, instability is created, allowing for convection and a strengthening of a storm system. The opposite is true for a positively tilted trough. Since colder air is not directly on top of the warmer air, there is very little, if any, instability. However, a positively tilted trough can swing around and become negative with enough momentum from winds in the upper atmosphere. There are many other factors that go into the genesis as well as the dissolution of storms, but just the simple shape of a trough can shape the future of a large-scale event. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, I'm Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook for the week of December 15th. Geminid meteors lit up the skies this past weekend with good viewing in the southeast and mid-Atlantic states. I took advantage of the large number of meteors to try something new, detecting meteor scatter. As meteors enter the upper atmosphere, a long trail of ionized air is created behind them. This trail is capable of reflecting radio waves transmitted from the Earth below. Trails live only briefly, usually a few seconds, producing a warbling ethereal tone if you're listening at the right time. It sounds something like this. Here's another. Using an inexpensive software-defined radio purchased off eBay for just a few bucks, I tuned into a frequency not in use in my area, but one that's used by stations more than 300 kilometers away. Even with the tiny antenna that came with the radio, I was able to pick up traces of some meteors as signals from over the horizon were briefly reflected by a meteor trail. The meteors themselves aren't producing the waves. They're just reflecting transmissions from Earth stations such as radio, TV, or radar stations. Until last year, the Navy and Air Force maintained a space fence producing a powerful signal just above the channel 13 in the VHF band 24 hours a day. Its purpose was to illuminate objects orbiting Earth for detection by receiving stations dotting the U.S. It's also very useful in spotting meteors. The upside of observing meteors this way is that it works day or night, and it's an interesting way to experience meteor showers and what's happening within our atmosphere. The downside is that you get no information about the direction the meteor was traveling, just that it was somewhere in the dome of the sky above you. These reflections are used by the U.S. Natural Resources Conservation Service's SNOWTEL system to gather snowpack and other climate data in extremely remote stations, in near real time. Instead of using satellites to bounce their signals, SNOWTEL bounces off of meteor trails. The Marshall Space Flight Center near Huntsville, Alabama has also listened for reflections from meteors for many years. Thanks to them for providing the audio samples here. That's your Astronomy Outlook. You can follow me on Twitter at RTPHokey for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Doing the show here on the 15th of December, and time for a little weather roundup. Things are actually relatively quiet, although I guess maybe the biggest news was the tornado, Shelby. Your tornado, what you have, an EF0, you say, out there yesterday?
Yeah, one confirmed at the last time I checked near Lake Arcadia, and then they were checking out one today down near Apache.
Okay. And we had a small one today in South Mississippi. But I see our friend Greg Carbon is still saying, looks like this might be the quietest year for tornadoes, what, in 100 years at least? Is that the deal? So, been very quiet. No major snowstorms. I don't think we had some snow maybe up on top of this low. This brought some showers down here. Minnesota, parts of maybe the Dakotas had some snow today. But it looks like the pattern's starting to change maybe as we get into the end of this month with a colder, more unsettled look for the nation, giving some people perhaps the hope of a white Christmas. John, you have a white Christmas in Pennsylvania this year? Oh, John, your mute button is on.
Looks like he's rocking out.
I'm doing it. I'm there. Oh, well, I've already been bothered about this potential storm this weekend, and then looking at a Huffmuller diagram today, there is the potential for perhaps a disturbance coming in around Christmas. So I think our odds are between 1 and 2 Christmases out of a decade are white around here. So yeah, we may see that odd.
Cool. Aubrey, how about you? What's happening? You got a snowstorm this weekend up there?
Oh yes, we have a major monster storm.
Monster storm, millions in the path.
And we're tracking another one in 3.5 weeks, a major storm. You know, I think they should change the definition of a white Christmas, because to me, any flakes flying from, like 6 o'clock Christmas Eve to Christmas Day, to me would be considered a white Christmas. But that's just my own personal thought.
It
has no basis. I think Christmas Eve is more exciting. I think snowfall, some flurries on Christmas Eve. Not a lot of snow, because that stresses me out. So some flurries, I'm okay with that on Christmas Eve. Find it more exciting.
Hey, what consultant told TV weather to people to say they're tracking everything? We track storms. I'm tracking showers. I'm tracking fog. Yeah. I track subsidence.
All right. Would you like me to?
Magid or ARD? Which one?
I'm going to put my Kevin Selly hat on, and I'm going to rant for a minute.
Go.
So somebody somewhere did a study, and the word tracking got popular. That people thought, ooh, if they're tracking it, then they're helping me to keep me safe, or they're whatever. It's a load of bunk, and here's why. 9 times out of 10, the stuff the TV stations are telling you they're tracking isn't trackable. You can't track a chance of something. You can track a tornado. You can track a storm. You can track a cold front. We actually dropped that line in a tease on our station tonight. And I said I mocked it after it was over, and I said, hey, look, we're actually tracking something you can track for a change. We've had this conversation with our promo folks, and it has to, in my book, and you can quibble with this. Language is an evolving thing, I suppose, but if you're going to track it, it has to be a physical something. It has to be something tangible that you could touch, that you could do something with and actually see it. I track a fox. I track a bear. But I can't track abstract concepts. I can't track a cool down. I can track a cold front, but I can't track a cool down. But beyond that, it's the fact that now we're tracking everything, and when you're tracking everything, you're tracking nothing. And right now, I'm tracking Kevin Selly saying he's got no pick of the week. Foghorn.
I'm just seeing Kevin showed up here. I haven't noticed he's in the room here.
As soon as he heard his
They're
name.
working on his upper air site.
I've been here the whole time. I'm just fighting with these new computers that I have here, still trying to learn my way around this place. But excellent discussion and great presentation from our friends in Tulsa.
So what's happening with you? How you doing?
Just, fighting my way. There's a lot. We had the same Weather Central computer in TXEN, but it was a couple generations behind. And so when I came in here, the first couple weeks, I was kind of learning Skip's routine. But for a long time, it was really interesting to me. For a long time at TXEN, I was the guy that built all of the stuff. So I knew the plumbing behind all the graphics as opposed to just executing them. And so now it's taking me a little time to learn the plumbing so I can make a few adjustments.
I think everybody should go online tonight and watch Kevin's 10 o'clock report.
Yeah, good luck with that because it's not there.
What?
No, it's not streamed.
What?
I just got here. Give me 10 minutes, will you, please?
Okay.
Hey, James, you desperately need to have the Price is Right sad horn as an audio file that you can play for Kevin right now.
I actually thought I had that, and I can't find it. I got so many things in here. Wow. Sorry.
Really good discussion tonight, though, guys.
Okay, well, where's that price? I have I see Pop Goes the Weasel. Chemtrails. I don't know. So what I'm going to do is actually play one that we need to play here because it is time in the segment where we can't wait to open up that email inbox.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right, so
I missed you, Aubrey.
Aw, thanks. I missed you guys too. Who else?
I like the Christmas card you sent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, anyone else get my Christmas card yet?
Not yet. I'm waiting.
No.
Oh, so only Brian. Okay.
Oh, I'm the favored one.
Please, you've got
The mailman just ran to your house.
Yeah.
I did send them all out together, to be fair. It's quite amusing. You'll enjoy it. So our first letter comes in from Cameron Venable, a senior meteorology student who loves the show and wants to know our thoughts on the job outlook in the field of meteorology. Senior at San Jose University, and has always wanted to work for the NWS, but so does everyone else. So it says that even though the private sector trying to find jobs can be ridiculous, and of course nowadays it seems that a bachelor degree doesn't mean much and masters are the new minimum, which is lame because I am somewhat burnt out. So
we have a former National Weather Service employee and a current National Weather Service employee on here.
Well, wait, if he knows about Weather Central Fusion, I'll hire him right now.
Perfect.
What are you paying for that position, Sally?
That's exactly zero.
Oh, well, I can't help you there.
All right, so Weather Service guys, what do y'all say? What's the job outlook? I'd love to hear this too.
It's tough. There's a spurt of hiring right now because we didn't do a lot of hiring over the last couple of years, and so we're going to catch up a little bit. We've started that process in the last year, and so in the short term, we'll try to catch up again. But overall, we're probably at a level where it's just a matter of attrition. You have to wait for folks to retire to get folks in. And that's not going to change anytime soon that I can see.
Yeah. Yep. Brian, what say you?
Just about the same. Yeah, the thing about the Weather Service positions is that there are usually always a few, but you can't guarantee that when you get out of college and get that degree that it's going to be a time when there are positions open. So, as Steve just said, it's got to be attrition and people have retired or or moved on to other, moved up the ladder as other people retired in upper level positions. So.
And the other piece of that is that much like television, you're not more than likely you're not going to be able to walk into your dream office as an intern.
Right.
You're probably going to have
absolutely.
to go to I won't list names because I'll probably make somebody mad, but you're wind up going to some small office in some small part of the country where nobody is interesting, and that's that. And then you work for 2 or 3 years, and then you work up to a forecaster and a journeyman, all that kind of stuff. But you're going to spend your first few years in a place that you never thought you'd live. It's the same way as TV, and if you refuse to do that, you limit your options.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with weather jobs, you really have to be willing to go where the job is. And then hope to get back to where you want to be, or that you enjoy the place and end up staying there.
I would agree with that and add some cautionary statements that I think we are about to see another round. You guys remember this, James? This was 10 or 15 years ago. There were a bunch of interns that sued some station because they felt like they had been worked so hard, and I don't think they were weather, they were news people, but they had been worked hard enough that they felt like they deserved some sort of a salary. And they actually took them to court. And I don't even remember if they won, but what it did was have a chilling effect on internships for a number of companies because they didn't want to pay people, obviously. But then they all went through this phase where they weren't going to have any interns. And it slowly worked its way back. I mean, that's how most of us, especially in television, made our bones. I mean, I interned for James for, geez, it seems like 20 years before I got a chance. But you have to do that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And with these numbskulls, just one or two bad eggs or bad apples ruining it for everybody. I think it's very, very difficult and sad. But that said, as Aubrey and Nate said, it's the only way. You have to go camp out on somebody's doorstep because that's going to be the differentiation point between you and everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. By the way, Kevin, I'm curious, for those watching, you have this incredibly illuminated tree.
Matthew and I were out last night shooting Christmas lights around Wichita Falls, and this is a house that's near a park in a particular section of town that is very brightly illuminated, as you can see. And I just thought I would share that with the online visual viewers.
That's incredible.
I was hoping you were going to say that's your front yard, your new home there in Wichita Falls.
Look what we did today.
Yeah, exactly. Matthew and I did that about 10 minutes this morning.
I always wonder how they get it so, around the branches and the tree trunk. And
somebody worked really hard. If anybody wants to see it, it's in my Twitter feed at Kevin.
That is amazing.
Hey, and listen, Aubrey, you or Nate got to take over. I found out I'm the lead story here at 10.
Oh, wow.
I'm tracking showers tonight, all right?
All right.
Tracking showers with millions in the path.
I'll continue to track the email that's coming in. Did we play Tarmos from last week?
We did.
Okay.
It was excellent.
So then I am all out of emails, and we didn't get a lot this week. What happens? I'm out for 2 weeks, and you guys don't send emails? What's going on? So if you want to send an email to me, make me feel better that my job here is useful, send an email to email@weatherbrains.com, and you can send in your guest suggestions, your maybe a pick that you think that I should have that we could promote on here, or if you have a favorite part of the show, what you like, what you don't like, or maybe a guest suggestion, send an email to email@weatherbrains.com. Don't forget to find us on the Twitter @WeatherBrains and the Facebook @WeatherBrains. Then we also have a website that's called weatherbrains.com.
Really?
Yeah.
No, really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
How original. All right. Before we move on to picks of the week, James and Steve have a very interesting radar image up. We were talking about this before, and walk us through this real quick.
Okay, this is the black and white 1-minute imagery from the terminal Doppler just north of the tornado. So that's the hole right in the middle of the screen, and you've got convection firing on the flanking line. Watch how this is at 0130. We advance to 0131. You have 3 pushes on that rain-free base. You can start to see 3 bulges. Watch the bottom one take over. This is now 133, 134, 136.
Wow.
And now you have a fully
Wow.
Echo 137.
Well, that didn't take long.
No. And the cool thing I love about that imagery is, sometimes we're looking at too much detail, and sometimes maybe thinning out some of that detail and looking at some of the basic structural elements can be really interesting. And I think that black and white imagery is really cool. So, all right, so let's do picks of the week, and let's start on the left-hand side with Miss Aubrey. Aubrey, a pick of the week from you.
Mine is a picture tweeted from the Capitol Weather Gang on the Geminid meteor shower from this weekend. If you happened to catch it, it was pretty spectacular. I got home from our Christmas party a little late, and after a couple of beverages, I kind of forgot about it, so I missed it, unfortunately, because I was kind of waiting on it all year, and very disappointed about that. But I did get binoculars that I ordered, and I'm waiting for a clear night to see if I can see some planets.
Very cool. Let's see, Brian looks like he stepped away for a minute, so Dr. John Scala, pick of the week.
Yeah, Nate, this is a nice little piece put together by the Weather Service office in Chicago, and this was an event that occurred back on December 12th, so just last week. And what they're showing, they're hypothesizing that in the absence of a cedar feeder mechanism, that is some ice nuclei from above falling into a stratusdeck that could generate some dendritic growth, they're hypothesizing it was pollution from smokestacks around Chicago that provided the ice nuclei and led to a very light snow event. So there's a great piece put together by the office there in Chicago.
Interesting. All right. Excuse me. Brian, are you here yet?
I'm here.
Okay. You're coming up.
I haven't left.
He's been sleeping.
I'm not getting any video from you, so it didn't look like you were there. But pick of the week, sir.
I'm here. I'm going to go with the weather forecast from the Los Angeles National Weather Service because they're the ones forecasting for the Rose Bowl, where I'm going to be on January the 1st.
All right. He's not excited about that at all, ladies and gentlemen, in case you weren't able to tell.
Have I shown you my pictures? Did I show you the tickets? Did I show you the tickets?
Yeah, we saw. They've since blacked out your video because you're showing them too much. Kevin Selly mentioned that
they have a rose on them.
Yeah, I imagine. Kevin Selly mentioned that he had no pick of the week. Have you found anything since then, Kevin? Nope, that's the foghorn.
I'm just going to make him the Christmas photo.
There you go. And Shelby Hayes,
pick of the week. I'll give you James's if you want.
All right.
His is a Mike Smith blog post about the story about Ginger Z as a weather pornographer.
That was,
That was absolutely disheartening. As a woman in meteorology, and Shelby, you can attest to this, this is absolutely unacceptable that this behavior still goes on, especially in that journalistic community, and that we're not getting that kind of respect to call her that. That is absolutely ridiculous and defamatory.
Yeah.
If Rob Marciano, who's the other meteorologist that ABC has hired, had been in the chief chair, I doubt they would have used the words that they did. Yeah. And that, to me, is really, that's the unacceptable part. The article makes some good points, but the characterization of Ginger Z was out of line and out of class, and an apology, in my opinion, is due. But I'll put that in one hand and spit in the other and see which fills up first, as my in-laws say. Shelby Hayes, pick of the week, madam.
Hey, shameless plug. Let's do the KOCO weather app. I'm in love with it. Our chief meteorologist actually comes on and talks to you when you get a warning in your area.
That's the last thing I need is my former morning guy in Abilene talking to me any more than he did. But Damon's doing a good job. You're working for a really class guy up there in Oklahoma City, so tell him I said hi.
I will. He's a great guy.
Steve and James, pick or picks of the week from you, gentlemen. Can be anything weather-related.
I'd pick Ray Sondak, a meteorologist in Tulsa that Brian Peters knows and took under his wing in Birmingham years ago, and has been sending me nasty tweets during this entire session and talking about
How's old Ray doing there, Steve?
Oh, he's doing fine. He's just the ray of sunshine that he always was.
That's I believe, the first time a heckler has been picked as a pick of the week on WeatherBrains. That's good stuff. Yeah. James,
by the way,
pick of the
Nate.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, Nate. I want to say that Steve and I go a long way back, but Steve didn't even say anything about it, so.
Well, that goes to show you he's a smart man. Didn't want to ruin the show by bringing you into it.
Absolutely.
James Adelot, pick of the week.
I'll just throw up that rotational time series again. It's one of those things that I wish I had access to real time, but I don't. But when you pull the Lemon Dawes wallpaper from '79, you're going to see that first meso that rarely tornadoes and the second meso that often does. And once it does once, the odds increase that it'll do it more than once. So
there's so much good storm scale meteorology done by Lemon and Doswell and sort of radar interpretation of that back in the late 70s and early 80s. And there are a couple of volumes of that have been published. It ought to be required reading. It was for us. It ought to be required reading for any meteorologist who thinks that they even want to look at a radar image, much less actually interpret it live on the air with lives on the balance. I remember taking that first radar course and thinking this is the new things that I didn't know, and that's the stuff that gets you killed. So can't recommend that stuff enough. All right, my pick of the week is an article written by Dennis Mercereau of The Vane. He had a chance to go into the belly of the beast. He went to the Weather Channel and had a tour at as a guest of David Clark, the CEO. Really nice write-up. It was a charm offensive, to be sure, and he notes that in the article, but said that he left with an appreciation for what they do. Still critical of some things, including naming storms and stuff like that. But it's always good to see the inside and to realize that a lot of times we're critical of people, i.e. the article about Ginger Z, and we forget that the people we're being critical of are still people. And we're all, I think, on our face, we're doing the best we can with what we know we have, and so it was good to do that. Really interesting read, though, if you are a fan of the Weather Channel at any level or have ever been. It's really a fascinating read and worth your time. So with that, I have a couple of news items I want to mention. We'll abbreviate this in the interest of time, but I wanted to mention first off that starting in 2015, the National Hurricane Center is going to be issuing a prototype or an experimental storm surge watch warning graphic, and they're very careful to point out that this is not a storm surge watch or warning in the official product sense. It is simply a graphic highlighting where those places are, and I'm putting that up for those of you who are watching. Yeah. This is essentially, they're going to shade areas that are likely to experience life-threatening inundation of storm surge within 36 or 24 hours, and you can see the different colors there if you're watching. So look for that in 2015. That'll be part and parcel with the experimental probabilistic storm surge guidance that's out now that they used during Hurricane Arthur and was rather successful, I think, at least in terms of here in North Carolina. So that was the big news there. And then Comet. We don't talk about Comet enough. I know we've talked about them from time to time in the past, had them on as guests, but maybe we need to do that again. But they are putting out a distance learning course about the new GOES-R satellite. If you haven't read about this thing, if you don't know the kind of stuff you're going to get, oh my gosh, it's going to do, I think, for satellite meteorology what Doppler radar did for radar meteorology. We're going to learn things we didn't even know were going on because the temporal and spatial resolution of the satellite data is going to be so awesome. We're also going to have lightning data. We're going to have better sounding equipment, and it's going to be good stuff. So, and there's also going to be a short course about GOES-R at the AMS Broadcast and Weather Warnings convention conference, I guess, here in Raleigh in June of 2015. So looking forward to learning more about that piece of equipment. So bunch of millions of dollars we're shooting up on the top of a rocket. So it's going to be good stuff. That's all the news we had. I did also want to talk about the calendar of upcoming shows. We got some good stuff coming in the next couple of weeks. Next week, let me see, I don't want to go too far. Next week, we've got Tim Bryce from the National Weather Service in El Paso talking, I'm sure, about social media. We also have the end of the week, or end of the year special, rather, with Greg Carbon. That'll be Monday, December 29th. That is a must listen to, can't miss episode every year. Monday the 5th. The Weather Center or WeatherBrains Roadshow goes to Phoenix, the American Meteorological Society annual meeting. And Dr. John, you're waving your hand. Will you be there and taking part?
I absolutely will be there. So will Mr. Murray.
Fantastic. That was a boatload of fun doing that at NWA this past year, past October. Looking forward to more of that in January at AMS. Really regret I can't make it out there this year. Following episode may move because of the national championship. We'll see how that goes. And then the week of the 19th, I am excited about this, and James, I think you will be too. It's the aviation special, and we have lined up some sweet guests for this one, including a National Transportation Safety Board meteorologist who, among other things, studies general aviation incidents and accidents. Going to have at least one private pilot broadcast meteorologist. I have an invitation extended waiting for confirmation on that, and also working on getting one of the airline meteorologists to come talk on that. So that's going to be a show all things aviation. Looking forward to that. But after that, our calendar is kind of thin. So if you have any thoughts, any suggestions, you have guest suggestions, we want to hear from you. Or if you have anything else, emails, anything like that, you can shoot them to us, email at weatherbrains.com. You can tweet us. Yeah, you can tweet us at @WeatherBrains. Find us on Facebook, WeatherBrains, or that Google thing, Google Plus. Yeah, there it is. WeatherBrains as well. All right, last round here. Shelby, how can folks find you if they want to get a hold of you?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter. It's at KOCO Shelby, and on Facebook, Shelby Hayes, Hays.
Very good. Steve and James, any final comments? How do folks get a hold of you if they want to follow up on your research?
Twitter at James Adelot, and Facebook Fox23 James Adelot, and yeah, we're both on there quite a bit.
Yeah, at SPILTZ, that's PILTZ on Twitter, and then Facebook also.
And Steve, we're going to have you back at some point to talk about that ICE index thing you got going on there too. We'll talk about that some.
We could do that sometime.
It'd be a fun show. So maybe if we have an ice storm between now and February, we'll book you again to talk about it. I'm not looking forward to that personally, but with that, all right. So we'll wrap it up for this week. Then this is WeatherBrains. It's the all about the weather netcast. If it's weather, we talk about it here. We typically record this program live via Google Hangout at 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 Mountain Time, 6:30 Pacific Time, 5:30 Hawaii Time. I think I've got my time zones correct. And on Monday nights, you can join us live at live.bigbrainsmedia.com, or you can head over to iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, weatherbrains.com, wherever else to listen to the program or watch it after the fact. And, of course, we love hearing from you. You can shoot us an email or leave us those iTunes comments. We love that as well. All right. That is this week in WeatherBrains. Until next week, I am not James Spann. Good night, and God bless.
And you don't have your time zones right. You left out Alaska. We're going to be hearing from all those people.
Good.
And the Hawaiian time zone is 2 hours different from Pacific.
That's right. I was Oppo. And so that means all the Alaskan folks, I'm sorry, and email Aubrey. That gives you a reason to email Aubrey. All right. Y'all, Shelby, Steve, James, thanks for being here. It was fun. Learned something. It's always a good thing.
Thanks, Steve. Always great to have you. Take care.
Bye.
evening, good evening, good evening. Ah, yes. It's time to wind down. Share a few boring personal stories. No, we had no pre-show tonight. That was weird. I don't know what happened. That was just strange. Everybody just kind of fell in place and forgot to hit the broadcast button until like right before the show started. I don't think you missed too much. But this was a good show. I mean, some of the shows. I mean, we're all different. I mean, everybody has different interests when it comes to weather, and I love obviously severe weather, radar technology, operational stuff, and this was great information with our crew from Tulsa and Oklahoma City on here tonight. So great show for me. I enjoyed listening to that. That was good. And watching. Let's see here. What else is going on? Boy, I just felt like this thing flew by so fast. Oh boy. What great boring personal stories can I share? We're looking at the schedule here. We are going to do next Monday. So we'll do December 22nd. The next Monday, I will be on vacation. And you know what happens when I go on vacation? We have snow, tornadoes, floods, or ice in December. So the pattern looks a little active after Christmas. So hopefully I can squeeze in some downtime. But I'm not scheduled to work the 29th. So that show, we're probably going to do a special during the week, maybe next week. I'll get with the gang. We'll figure out a time for that. We'll get it in, though. That's our year-ender, that December 29th show. That'll be the one with Greg Carbon from SPC, who comes on and does the year-end review. And that is a great episode every year. And I'm very interested to talk with Greg about the lack of tornado activity this year, and there's just a lot of things to talk about. So that'll be a cool show. But I'll let you know the date as soon as we get that. Man, what else? We got our Toys for Tots marathon tomorrow. It's a big thing here locally. We're a Toys for Tots station, which is a great ministry. It's a great thing. A lot of families are in need where we are and where you are too. And we will be doing a 26-hour stretch gathering toys at a local restaurant. And that's always a lot of fun. It's kind of exhausting, but that's fun. So I'll be in Live Shot City for the next 2 days. In fact, this will probably be my last time in my little closet here. Let's see, what else? I guess that's it. It's kind of we're kind of starting to slow down here a little bit, which is good, almost to the Christmas break. So we'll wrap it up. There's like something I want to talk about here, and I can't think of what it is. What's really creepy, it's all these people that are still watching this. Expecting me to say something totally outrageous. No, I probably shouldn't have fussed at Shelby about the rural thing, but I do see a trend in so many markets where if there's a tornado right in the larger cities of the DMA, oh yeah, you'll get wall-to-wall coverage. But the minute the tornadoes are out of those larger cities, you go back to Freak of the Week or whatever programs on television. And the other thing too, I notice if there's damage, they go right to the reports, the news people, and they take over with damage. You can have a tornado down threatening life and property. You don't hear about it because they're reporting on damage from a storm that happened an hour ago. And I understand that damage is very important and all that, but my position is you can't have it until I'm done with it. The weather people. I mean, you can have a little blurb every once in a while, but as long as we have tornadoes down and somebody's life's in danger, you just can't take it. We've got to keep it. And I see too many stations that do that. And I don't think it's necessarily the decision of the weather people. I think it's the decision of the schmucks at a higher level. But I do think that people are discriminated against that live in rural areas. And I'm not so sure a life is less precious if you live 80 miles away from a city. Just because you live in the country, that just doesn't make any sense. And, if you're afraid of somebody, sending you a nasty email, come on. I mean, Oh, goodness. How many nasty emails have I received over the years? I could just do a whole book of nasty emails. Well, one guy said that I should have been aborted with a coat hanger after we cut off a golf match or something. The ones that they don't sign, I don't respond. If they're anonymous, I really don't. I might glance at them. But if there's a name, I'll look at it. And I respond to a lot of them. I can't respond to all of them, but within that, we have to be careful, not to say hate mail. Criticism is not hate mail. Constructive criticism is good. That's the only way we can get better. And that stuff doesn't go in hate mail. Somebody can be critical, and if it's really good constructive criticism, that's not hate mail. The hate mail is, you're ugly and so is your mama. Man, have I got a pile of that. In fact, here's a funny story. I have not answered my phone in 18 years. The last time I answered my phone was, let's see, not 16 years. I have not answered my phone in 16 years. It was in 1998. I've shared the story before. Some woman just reamed me out after cutting off General Hospital. You cut off my story. And boy, she just started ugly talking me, bad ugly talking. At this point, I don't know where my phone is. I don't know my phone number, and I don't know how to get voicemail. So if you call me at the station, good luck with that. Email, I'm on it. Social media, I'm on it. I've devoted my time to that. All right, I got to go. Thank you all for watching. Have a great week. We'll see you next week on the 22nd. Bye-bye.